Voila. It should be recording now.
Right.
So, welcome on this beautiful Sunday. My name is Pauline Betrancourt. I am an artist and an art educator, and I've been working with the Leo Marchutz School of Painting and Drawing for multiple decades. Started to be involved in 2007, and I work very regularly with them on different programs. So this monthly Masterwork practice hour is dedicated to creation, giving yourself a little bit of time to discover what you can express, what you can draw, and also to continue to foster the sense of community that is so important in art. Um, so I will be covering for Nick, who is currently in Venice, and I am very, very pleased to meet you all. I wanted also to talk to you today about a program and an online class that I will be teaching in May. Perhaps you've seen it. So I'm going to right now share my um, desktop with you. It will be easier. Hop. Hello. Can you see properly? So when you go on the Leo Marchutz School website, you can see that in their programs, they have a lot of opportunities. And so soon in May, I will be teaching a class called Drawing What You See, Exploring the Eye to Hand Relationship in Mark Making. It will happen on Sundays, May 3rd, 10th, 24th, and 31st for 2 hours. And it will be an opportunity for you to really create a stronger relationship between spontaneity and accuracy. And we'll be working mainly with only using just black and white, mainly with value with either charcoal, drawing, ink, or graphite. And it will be a great opportunity to really try to get in the zone and develop that sort of relationship in between how can the eye perceive an information, meditate on it, absorb it, and how the hand is actually a continuity between what we see and how we can express it. So we can also really take the time to look at our work on a piece of paper and analyze it afterward and become more and more spontaneous. If it's a little bit as if we are going to be practicing like a dancer or perhaps, like a singer or like a musician, just being present to the process so it becomes a little bit more natural and you can also discover the quality of your strokes. Um, so this is one of the program. I also give personalized critiques about your work that is an hour long and it can be dedicated to anything you would like to work from. So what I'm going to do today is to share with you a beautiful image also on the chat, and we're going to be working from a famous painting, and I'm going to get the chat again up. So this is Whitfield with Crow, and I'm going to share again my screen to be able to share with you the image on my desktop as well as my little camera where I will be working too. So during this practice hour, as usual, this is not a class, there's not a lesson plan, but I will be sharing with you my experiences. So if along the process you have any question, please feel free to ask me. Otherwise, you can remain muted. And if you also just want to get in the zone and you don't want to hear my comments, you can mute me. Okay? Sounds good? Then I want to also say a special thank you to all the returning participants who regularly contribute. And this monthly practice hour is offered free to our community. And if you'd like to support the mission of the Leo Marchutz School of Painting and Drawing, you can donate at the link that I've shared in the chat. So here is the beautiful painting of Van Gogh. I'm going to reduce this and we're going to get ready. So if you want to work directly from the image, you can put it up, okay? Were you all able to access it on the chat? And then here, I am just putting my camera so you can have a vision of what I'm going to do. So I try to help you because one of the things that is most important when we work from an original artwork is to kind of respect the proportion of the original artwork. And so the dimension of this painting in particular, I've done my math, is 4 inches by 8 and 3/8 inches. So, or you can roughly draw a rectangle, but that would help you to sort of visualize how large it needs to be. Respecting this proportion will really help you to create the same visual dynamics that exist within the work. And particularly in this one, where the relationship from the sky to the field and also the up and also the birds, the crows, is really important. So how would I, for example, go about it as if I'm starting? I would perhaps take a moment to open up to the image that I have in front of me, or like I would be in nature, kind of opening up to my motif, really taking the time to perceive the character of things. And in this particular painting, there is beautiful rhythm and energy within the strokes themselves of paints and their direction. And the unity and relationship between these strokes do create a wonderful movement throughout the whole piece and coherence. I'm starting to notice what is particularly dark and how this darkness actually give the light of the painting and also give all its power to the field itself and the clouds. So as I'm going to use a matte graphite just to start, we all have our preferences and it really depends on how you like to use the medium. I really like to hold my pencil like this because actually it really helps me to be a little bit more spontaneous and fluid in my movement. Sometimes when I need to do something very precise, I can work like this, but I would, start to encourage you also just to be able to sort of perhaps see how physically holding a pencil or a piece of charcoal can help. Maybe as I'm starting to put down some strokes, I can start to put down a few elements related to the field itself. I'm going just to tone down the slide. Whoops, the other way around. And perhaps I can bring it a little closer so you can see it better. Up. So when we're looking at the work and also the way you can start is to kind of have an understanding of the whole of the work and with a few marks trying to address already some of the darks or midtones to kind of help you place elements. I have a tendency to work relatively fast, so I may do, a few using different kind of materials. And one thing that I sort of like to do, because again, we are all so different in terms of our process. And I have to say that the most important is that you do what, feels right to you or what may, can challenge yourself and improve, but sort of, tackling the most kind of structural and fundamental element sort of really helps to give a sense of structure and architecture to the work. Understanding that, or perhaps accepting the idea that architecture is actually drawing in volume, in a three-dimensional aspect, and that it has also, of course, a lot of impact on how we perceive things. And thus the drawing here, when I talk about its architecture, sort of its most important masses, and how naturally those relationships may allow a world to arise. So right now I'm starting to see that I do have a sense of an horizon, but I've been very careful in not really putting a dark line all the way back, because otherwise it may have just blocked the relationship to the atmosphere. And thus I'm giving myself a little bit of time to be able to choose the right values for these yellows and reds that are fairly light. It's important, and perhaps I didn't say it enough, that when we work from a copy, it's more like a musician who is trying to interpret and embody something that already exists. So it's more a pursuit of trying to render what we see, but not trying to make a forgery. There's no point in that, of course. It's more like opening up to, oh, how did they do it? How did Van Gogh, through such a life of passion and dedication to his work, was able to, really be able to work and produce such phenomenal discoveries and really find his own voice. Okay. Well, that's better. Um, and so working on making a copy of this beautiful painting of the wheat field and the crows, where he did it from life, this one in particular. Well, perhaps it is more about discovering as you draw the content of the work, and your pencil may take you to the different character, because I have a hard time finding another word, but like how the different element actually bring a different meaning. When you work on the whole drawing on a whole painting, you can start to see how elements relate to one another, and really studying the right value can really help you balance out the the luminous effect of the whole painting or the whole work. What do I mean by that? That the luminous effect, or that moment where things just sort of come together, following its own accord, really sort of allow to give a sense of ground. It allows a form of incarnation. Sometimes I hold the pencil like that, and I also use these kind of strokes to be a little bit more rough and spontaneous rather than a very kind of detail and fine line, just because it gives a sense of it gives a little bit more materiality to the work. And here, this one may be a little too strong. I'm trying to preserve the light in the sky of the cloud and also of the field. That's why I haven't um tackled it too much yet. And because I keep in mind that the most important is what my work needs rather than copying exactly what I see. I'm sort of trying to pay attention to the moment when um I'm gonna need to stop or put down, strokes that are meaningful to the work rather than just putting them down for the sake of putting them down. That makes sense. I like to imagine too that sometimes when I draw, it's a little bit like dancing or playing with an imaginary violin, and that my strokes would be the huh, how do you say that in English? The arche, striking the notes. One thing that is important and that sort of really helps to give the dimensionality of the different objects or element is also to sort of follow their own curve and their own movement, meaning that some strokes need really to operate as in horizontal in order to emphasize other horizontal element. And being sort of able to see how the different directionality of strokes can really help to give the inner structure of the element also is going to interact with the other strokes that are present in a work. So what do I mean by that? I mean that perhaps in my sky, that I'm still, being very careful in not overworking. I do need to pay attention to how some element in the sky actually is going to interact with the shape of the crows, and how this sort of V dimension start to play with that, the V dimension also of the field itself, because there are beautiful inner pattern to this work. And with Van Gogh, it's kind of, I don't want to say easier, but it did give us a good sense of movement. The strokes that he's using are both describing the light of the object, those lights in relationship to the whole image, but also it is creating an incredible amount of movement. And that movement is also what gave a sensation to the work. Is what is giving the work a sensation of its sort of inner life. Because it is through the contrast, the movement, and the relationship that you sort of look everywhere throughout the whole painting, and their sense of unity start to be built. I would say that personally in my process, but also when I work with different students, sometimes what we share in common and what really brings a sense of awe is witnessing the moment when the work sort of take its own life and it becomes alive because there's something about it, the way it is put together, where it seems to work. It seems to have those important relationships. Um, and when this happens, it is after a moment of stripping down a little bit, you know, expectation and ego, in the sense that when you dedicate yourself sort of solely, sorry, only to the work to be done, and it's sort of inner poetry, something quite surprising can happen. And I wonder if sometimes the whole work of the artist and the whole work of, as human, is not perhaps to be, the witness of these moments where things bloom and when they take their own life on the paper with colors. And don't know if what I'm saying is making sense. But I wanted just to share that with you as I'm working and discovering things too. Now I'm working on a small scale, so I have to be careful to also not put too many crows for the sake of putting down crows, and really sort of preserving the inner movement. And really kind of studying the values and sort of seeing if there's a moment where I need to go a little lighter, or, for example, here, because of the intensity of this light, sort of turn the cloud into a sun or a moon, or it's more like a moon. It almost looks like a. So that is changing a little bit to in comparison to the original. And I may want to sort of tone it down a little bit, but not too much, perhaps. I may need to stop right here on that one, just because I may overwork it. And it's whoop, whoop. That is up. Better scale here. Just want to make sure that no one is trying to talk to me while I in the chat should show up normally. No, nothing in the chat. Oh. So what I'm going to do that, I'm just going to try to do another one because we still have 25 minutes together. And thanks to my little template, I can, well, this is not very straight right here. Hoppala. I can sort of very quickly draw the relationships between heights and width. Could do it also just with my hand, but it was a good way to sort of do it quickly. And now I can perhaps try to work with something different, with some sort of water-soluble graphite, and see what happens. So I like to be using graphite that is water soluble because it really helps me to create a strong relationship between mark making brushstrokes while still doing some study with just black and white values. So here too, you see that strokes are different, and depending on the brush, obviously, can really get a different kind of result. I love to work with these brushes in particular. Well, it's called the Leonard, 2.0, just because they allow me to work on very small formats sometimes. There is in réserve with the water, but it can be quite dynamic in terms of the brush strokes. But we all have our preferences, and that's what is the most interesting. We don't necessarily have an endless budget on art supplies, but Pam, see, you left your hand. Affiché. Yes.
Sorry, I apologize. I was late. And I'm been watching you because I could keep up. But when you're mark making, what is telling you, what is driving you to select the marks that you are making? Is it just light and shadow, or you're just trying to get the direction right now?
Good question. All of it.
Okay,
So
that's fair.
there is something that, I mean, this is such a fascinating subject for me in terms of how do I try to not sort of intellectualize too much the process and sort of give that sense of unity and oneness. And it does have to do a lot with the value. If I don't start with the right value, or if my value, if they're a little off, if I don't adjust them, I get in trouble. But
Right.
so it will be, so it's both kind of a surprise. It comes from experience, and it comes from also sort of considering the mark making in its unity, how it is in itself. But how does it relate to everything else at the same time? And so, for example, I know for a fact that if I just get stuck up there without sort of even very lightly addressing what is happening kind of in the bottom right here, I'm not gonna help myself. I mean, each painting or each work sort of, demands perhaps different way of treating it. Sometimes it's important to start with very, very heavy dark. Sometimes it may be a little too much. In terms of that, I don't have a recipe, and every time is sort of a test. So it is also obviously the result of my experience. But if I use a very strange metaphor, it's each stroke is sort of weaving into the world I'm creating. Does that make sense?
And it does, especially given that this is a Van Gogh. And
Yes.
I can see now, just watching and not trying to follow along, that you're kind of like giving yourself
I'm sorry. I
you're
don't
giving,
know.
it seems like you're giving yourself
Sorry.
some edges so
Yes,
that you can get the relationship and like working from the outside in, sort of. Is that
definitely. And and at the same time, um it is very much related to having an understanding that the whole of the painting is very important, if not almost the whole, very much more important than the individual parts. So I'm constantly trying to work on the whole, including the individual elements.
thank you.
So,
Go ahead.
so yeah, sorry. So what I also mean by that is that, and we're all different, and I don't ever mean, kind of, imposing any kind of, vision. But what helps me is to be um, very perceptive to the character of things, in the sense that almost each stroke that I put down, if it's, you know, the crows, I'm trying to connect my hand. Well, actually, it's gonna go more for my vision, m my experience of a bird, my feeling of a bird, to my making of a bird. So to a certain extent, my strokes become in itself the thing that I am seeing. It's a
Understand.
little, yes, it's a little strange when I say it like that. But does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I apologize for the call coming in. I just don't know how to remove the notification from my computer. I did. I tried. It doesn't work. Even on the concentration mode. But so it's and also one thing that is really important and that I will work um with during my online class is the proximity of the brush to the paper, and how things can really be just either very delicately touched, put down, really trying to not break a movement. It's almost a little bit like dancing, like practicing a gesture. And we all have very different way of doing it. So my way is not the way. You see what I mean? And the quality of a stroke also come forth the little quirks that we all have. You see what I mean? It's a little bit like when we dance. It's like how do we get the or like our voice, how do we get the most out of it? I may say. But I want to be, here, for example, I want to be careful between the how much graphite do I have on my brush, how dark it is, and in my experience of it, I know that I can, also sort of exhaust it a little bit on the paper. But if I just go too heavy suddenly, um, I can just make a big blob. So it has to be gentle. Also, constantly moving. If I'm not wrong, I think there's an anecdote of Monet picking on Delacroix studio, and the only thing they could see of him is a hand constantly moving on the canvas when Delacroix was very old. And Monet very young. But it is true that sort of working relatively fast can help, but it's not a rule either, you know. Some people may just, work in a more um, staccato way, more percussive way, or more like a ARP way. Now you see that the placement of my bird can be, whew, good or a little off, it depends. But once they're down, I just gotta do with it. So we have 12 minutes left. Hop. And honestly, it is all a question of exploring the material. And for that, you need to try and try and try and try and not have the expectation of um, doing something wonderful every time. It's only a work in progress. And often I like to say to students that, do we expect that any musicians or athletes just do their Olympic, record, from the start? No, it's just the result of a lot of time and it's once you sort of embrace the humbling process of just trying, then things happen. By having just that sort of curiosity and openness to, oh, what happened if I do this? What happened if I do that? Well, here it works. There's something that is just true to the content. What I mean by the content, it's sort of the meaning, the inner life of the work. I would say that looking is crucial. I mean, that's at the core the school. And when one of the first name of the school was a seminar in vision, and for Leo Marchutz, it was really, really important to pay attention to what we saw emerging from the work and to looking at other works of art. Because it is through, seeing with our current medium that our senses, so sight, um, evoke many realities. It's not only something, you know, conceptual or that belongs to the mind. It's a synthesis of what happens in the mind through the senses. And so here we can see that this mark was too heavy. And perhaps these two in comparison to what is going on the other side. It's really fascinating also to see how bringing a darkness in a corner really helps to bring together, or not, a light, or to sort of give a context to everything else. Now, when I look at it, that darkness is a little too intense in relationship to perhaps what needs to happen over there. So that's the moment where, I sort of pay attention to not going too far, sort of seeing you know, what did the work need? Because from experience, I do know that sometimes overworking something is can really quickly happen. And like you're seeing, this is very dark and way too dark. So I take my paper towel and I control the value. This may be a little messy right here, but that's okay. It's just an exercise in seeing and the moment of reverence and perhaps appreciation for the work we're looking at that Van Gogh did. That's interesting because I really darkened that crow. And the value of this crow really gave value to the light. That is really important to understand and to see. And this is something that I sort of when I paint and really to go back also to your question, um, the value relationships. Yes, is it light? Is it dark? Is it coming forth? Is a really helpful element because from the shadows relationship, the light will emerge. And that particular quality of light is what's gonna give coherence to the whole work. And also the quality of the light will then give a sense of um, of mood, humeur, but more than that, it will give it sort of meaning, if I may say. And often, doing multiple help to sort of transition from just a warming up to being present to the work. It really helps sort of not just do one drawing, but do multiple.
Mhm.
And voila. Yeah, maybe I'm gonna just stop here to not overwork it, and even though other things may could happen. If you're not done with this work, you can, of course, keep working and download the image that I sent.
Mhm.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hop là. It's
Thank you
good.
for the class. Thank you for the class.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Oh, yes, it was my introduction to water-soluble graphite. I will explore that a little bit more. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Please do it. I mean, if you like it, it's just for me, it really helps to
Mhm.
bridge drawing and painting
Mhm.
in a very meaningful way. So that's why I use it because it sort of free my brush strokes,
Right.
but helps me also to pursue the light to dark relationships, whether it is in
Yeah.
color or value. So what we can do, so you have the image available there, but this also painting is available on the Van Gogh Museum website if you're looking for it. And so the next session, practice hour session, will be on Sunday, May 17th. Okay. At 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find it on the website of the school. Okay.
Okay.
If you have any question about my class in May, or if you have any question about how I do my personal online, classes, please feel free to ask any question or write to Rose or write to me. Et voilà. And perhaps we can just try to do a screenshot with whoever
Oh,
wants to show their work. And I'm going to try to do it properly. This is wonderful. Command Shift 3.
okay.
I'm going to do multiple, but I got one. Are you good? Whoops. Good. Thank you so much. I had a great time spending this hour with you, and I wish you a beautiful Sunday where you are. And voila.
Uh,
Thanks
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're so
Thank
welcome.
you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.